There's always a better way to do what you're doing right now. So be grateful. Now they're just like, oh my gosh, there's so much more to do, right? And I was like, no, programmatic is where my heart is. Amen. Welcome, everybody. This is a special community call. We're going to go ahead and do the recording like we did a couple of weeks ago with Miles Younger, from the U of Digital. Today we have Shiv from the U of Digital. Hi, Shiv. How are you?
Hi, Ellen. Very happy to be here.
Shiv, let's have a quick introduction, who you are, who you is, how you got where you got, and maybe a goal for the year.
Ooh, that's good. Okay, a little background on me. So I've been in digital advertising, ad tech my whole career. I was at ad.com to start my career, which was one of the OG kind of performance ad networks. You know, I like to say we were doing programmatic before programmatic was a word. And then, that was part of AOL. So I was really at AOL for about 10 years in operations and sales leadership. I was at Criteo for a couple of years, leading East sales in the US. And then 5 years ago, I decided to start this company. So my company is called U of Digital. Started it, I realized I love teaching. I love training. I wanted to do that full time. Two, I wanted to give back more. I wasn't getting that through my corporate jobs very much. And so, one thing that we do at U of Digital is we always give back to education related causes in the form of donations. And then last but not least, probably most important, like I saw a real market need in digital advertising for upskilling and knowledge. I think it's a really complicated space. It moves fast, especially now. There's all these like new areas of the ecosystem that are emerging and colliding into each other. So, TV, audio, MarTech, cloud, there's all these new disciplines that people like struggle to understand and have to understand in order to do their jobs effectively. And their companies have to understand them in order to properly, grow and reach their goals. And so, our job is to kind of to grease those wheels of the industry by up-leveling everybody, by upskilling folks and organizations on the landscape, on the technologies, on the industry in general.
Yeah. And did you tell us how you started in programmatic? Like
I just, I went to a job fair. I was, a college kid. I went to a job fair. I was like, I want to work in tech, and I was fortunate enough, summer after junior year, I had an internship at Google. So I got some exposure and I was like, okay, well, I really want to work in tech. I didn't really care about working in ad tech. I just wanted to work in tech. But I went to a job fair and there were advertising.com was there. And, I didn't have a great GPA, honestly. And they were like, well, we'll interview you. And apparently I did well in the interview. So I got, it's like most people fell backwards into ad tech. They didn't like seek it out. So
yeah, that's an interesting story. And y'all, I don't know if I've ever shared that here, but 3.5 years ago, when I realized like in early 2019, I was working for this agency and it was very toxic. And I told my husband by the end of the year, 2019, I'm only going to freelance contract for myself. And so somebody told me about We Are Rosie, and one of the We Are Rosie person told me like, if you're hesitant to doing this full time, you can talk to a few people. And I was put in contact with Shiv. And I got on a call with Shiv. It was March. I just came back. I just found the notes. Let me pull them up. But it was March 2019, and Shiv was one of the first people I talked to. And I asked him like, for real, like, I'm thinking about doing this. And one of my main reasons is because March 5th to 2019. And I don't want to do only activation. I want to train people. I really like training people. And Shiv told me straight up how he did. He was like one of the first people to give a visual of what could be in our industry. And he did it first and he's doing it great. And he's paving the path for other people like myself. So thank you so much, Shiv.
Thank you. Thanks for saying that. It means a lot. I mean, I always love talking to you. I'm very inspired by what you've built too, Ellen. So I'm excited to participate in this. Thanks for having me on.
He's gonna give us access to the free version of the newsletter, I think. So I'll add that in the show description. And for my people on the community call, I'll share that sometime next week in Slack. But strongly recommend his newsletter. And that's why he's here to talk about the latest and greatest in CTV and OTT world, right? I love his newsletter because he gives not only like a quick recap of like, this is what you missed, this is what you should know, but he also breaks it down because let's be honest, we all speak English and we all have so many years in writing and reading, but sometimes some articles just don't make no damn sense. So Shiv demystifies for us. And then he gives his professional opinion about like, hey, this is how you want to put this into perspective. And so let's start with like, all right, what are the 3 or 5 things we should know so far that have happened in 2023 when it comes to streaming, when it comes to maybe audience fragmentation and streaming? What would be like, oh, this is what's happening. This is what's happening.
Yeah, it's a great question. So my mind first and foremost goes to measurement, CTV measurement. So obviously last year, and I think actually the year before that was a pretty pivotal year because Nielsen started kind of falling apart a little bit, right? So Nielsen had a lot of financial struggles. They split the company up. Yep. And then they basically got, they lost their accreditation from the MRC because of, some issues they had for, counting audiences during the pandemic. And as they lost their accreditation, we just saw this huge gold rush into CTV measurement from, Video Amp and iSpot and, TV Squared, Data Plus Math, et cetera. So what we saw is like, okay, well, Nielsen, which has forever dominated television measurement, and the assumption was always that they would dominate online television measurement, digital television measurement. All of a sudden, that wasn't the case anymore, right? And there was already, iSpot has been around for a while, Video Amp's been around for a while, so like these things have been brewing, but they really had their moment, right? Of just like, okay, well, Nielsen's falling apart, let's rush in. And so what we saw during, I think, last year's upfronts and what we're going to see in this year's upfronts is that a lot of companies, kind of led by, I'd say NBC has been a big leader here. But they're saying, listen, we're not going to just use Nielsen anymore to do audience guarantees in the upfronts. We're going to use alternative currencies, right? So, we're going to work with iSpot, and iSpot's going to be our measurement provider of record to be able to say, yes, we hit your demographic guarantees or we did not. And that's huge. That is huge for the industry. That shakes things up. That shakes basically it shakes up how we transact these ads, because the way a lot of OTT CTV is transacted on, it's not just, hey, you pay a CPM, it's you buy it based on guarantees, just like television. And if the measurement of that guarantee has changed fundamentally, like the methodology of it, the data behind it, the efficacy of it, et cetera, then that changes the industry tremendously, right? So we're still in midst of that. I know OpenAP right now is working on kind of like standardization of currencies, but that's one big topic in the OTT CTV space.
Okay.
Number one. Should I keep going?
Go for it.
So another one, I guess I'd say is kind of this rush from the OEMs into CTV and OTT. And so
into what?
So when I say the word OEMs, right, I mean basically like the big TV manufacturers, right? So in the past, Samsung, LG, Vizio primarily, right? Like they haven't been major players, but they're really coming on strong right now. And if I think about walled gardens, right? So I think about walled gardens as it pertains to digital, my mind goes to Google, Facebook, Amazon. And the walled gardens are super powerful, right? They control over 65% of all ad spend, all digital ad spend. And why are they powerful, right? So they established themselves, 10, 15, 20 years ago because they were really powerful publishers, right? So they were the biggest publishers in the space. They had the most traffic, the most audiences, the most data, and then they built ad tech on top of it. And they had kind of, a moat, like just a built-in moat to their business. And that's how they built this big walled garden, right? So now if I think about, in the year 2023, what are the new frontiers in digital? Obviously, CTV is leading the pack in terms of like, okay, we know this is going to be huge. Obviously, it's going to be huge. Who is positioned like Google or Facebook or Amazon from 10, 15, 20 years ago for this new kind of future realm of CTV? Well, it's kind of these device companies, right? Because they have a very interesting flywheel, right? Like their flywheel is, they're content creators, right? So Samsung has a very popular AVOD app called Samsung TV Plus. Roku has a very popular app called the Roku channel, right? And so, and then also with their carriage agreements with the apps, they actually get access to, 30% of the inventory from the apps that are on their devices. So they own some of the inventory. They obviously have tremendous data, ACR data, automated content recognition data. They're the biggest kind of owners of that data. And that's very powerful in CTV, especially because cookies are not a thing in CTV.
Yeah.
And to me, like, they have an opportunity to be, maybe not as big as Facebook, Google, or Amazon, but that's kind of how I'm thinking about them big picture, if they can execute properly. Obviously a lot of ifs there. But it's interesting to see them rush into the space over the last few years.
Right. And okay, so let's take a pause to really talk about ACR real quick.
Yep.
Because I heard on one of the Ad Exchanger podcasts where Alison Boyle was talking about ACR being the next privacy concern thing. And because of the fact that, and correct me if I'm wrong, because this is what I understood from it, but ACR is this digital footprint that is created based on the content of the household. So it's IP address, I guess, household specific. And if the household is, I don't know, if they are used to watching a certain type of content, then they put a footprint on it. And so that's how this footprint information is given or shared with the advertiser, right?
Yes. So let me add a little bit of nuance to that.
Yeah.
So the way ACR data, it stands for automated content recognition. And basically what it does is it's technology that takes little snippets from whatever's on the TV, like what's on the glass. So like every few milliseconds, it'll capture a screenshot of what's on the glass. And it'll also maybe use a microphone to capture audio of what's being played, right? Okay. Then it bumps up that information against a known database of content and ads. And it can say, oh, okay, well, this TV watched Olympics at night, watched NBA basketball on Wednesday, watched Hulu, Modern Family 5 times this week, saw 10 McDonald's ads, right? So it's basically like, how we do behavioral tracking and targeting on the web using cookies. ACR data is kind of like doing that for a television.
Okay, cool. So is a privacy concern from the fact that consumer don't understand what's happening in the back end on their TV screen, or is it just like the fact that it's just advertising and they don't want to let us be great? Which one is it? I think I have an idea. Which one is it?
So let's try to answer that. Let's try to crowdsource that answer if we can. So jump into the chat or come off mute. Did anybody know that their television is taking little snapshots of what they're watching every few milliseconds and maybe capturing audio from it? And now that you know that, do you think that's creepy and weird or not? What do you all think? Creepy, yes or no?
Nah.
It's not creepy? You don't think so, Carrie?
I mean, they already got to know what I'm watching.
Okay, well, kind of. Yeah.
Carrie's a no. Carlos is a yes. Rose is a yes. I'm a yes. I think that's pretty creepy. So that's the privacy concern, right? And we're ads people, right?
They need to pay me, Carlos said.
Yeah, they need to pay you, right? Exactly. So like, here's the thing. I bought a new LG TV maybe like 6 months ago, and I set it up. And one of the first things that it prompted me for when I was setting it up was like, hey, we're going to collect some data for advertising purposes. That's the ACR data capture prompt, right? And when I consented to it, I kind of knew what was going on. 99% of people have no clue what that means, right? And so this idea of just like, oh, well, we asked people for consent and now we can just capture everything they're watching all the time. That's not privacy invasive. Like, that's where the gray area is, right, Ellen? That's what we're talking about when it comes to privacy concerns.
Yeah, but isn't it like a really long white page? Because I remember talking to my husband about it just a couple of weeks ago when I listened. I was like, did this happen with any of our TV? He's like, yeah. I was like, I don't remember. He's like, yeah, because you set it up.
Like,
he's like, you don't set it up. I set it up, but I knew for a fact it was your people in advertising that are trying to track something. But I think, yes, because I know you work in advertising.
Yeah, but here's the thing. He probably just wanted to watch something. And he was just like, yes.
Yeah.
So like that, I mean, that is the ongoing existential conundrum with privacy in our space, right?
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is like, I think some people think, and a lot of times regulators are just like, consent is the answer, right? If I can get somebody to click yes on a box, I can do whatever I want. And my view of privacy is a little different. It's people don't know what they're saying yes to. So we need to do things more proactively to protect people. And so I'm a little bit on like, hey, I don't think that's enough. But then I'm also not Apple and Google, right? I'm somewhere in the middle where it's like, we got to do more to protect people's privacy. We still have to enable the open web and tracking for advertising purposes because that subsidizes consumer usage of a lot of great tools and products. So we've got to find like the right middle ground there. It's not this extreme or that extreme.
Yeah, like Scholar said in the comments, like it's not informed consent. So
there you go. Thank you,
I
Carlos.
agree.
That's the right term.
So, you know, when you compare, I mean, ACR does remind me a little bit of the purpose of cookies, right? From a publisher's perspective. And that'll be the last question before we go back into your bullet points.
Okay.
But are those OEM going to use this ACR data to maybe customize what we're going to start seeing on TV? Solely advertising purpose, like for advertisers. Because publishers, it was created, you know, cookies were created to make it our experience a little bit better. And, you know, did you forget to buy this, or here's similar items? Is that going to be the same? Hey, here's similar something.
That's a really good question, Ellen. I don't know I'm an ads guy, so I don't quite know the answer. If I'm kind of like spitballing a little bit and riffing on that, I think it's already happening to a certain extent. Like I think, you know, if you just think about Netflix and their recommendation engine, right? Your recommendation, at the app level. Yeah, like your recommendations look way different than mine, right? Based on our tastes and what we watch. So there's already some kind of fingerprinting or whatever you want to call it happening that customizes our connected TV experience. I would imagine programmers and content creators will continue down that path. Of course, I primarily think of it from an ads lens. And the answer from an ads perspective is like, yeah, absolutely. Yes. ACR data is going to change the ads that we see based on what the ACR data knows about our viewing habits and our consumption and what we like and what we don't.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, cool. So let's get back into your list of trends that we need to pay attention to.
Yeah. So the first one is measurement and how it's, you know, there's no one currency right now, how it's all changing.
Nielsen and iSpot TV.
Yep. The second one is the emergence of these new CTV OEM walled gardens. I need a number 3, huh?
If I may ask a question that would lead into number 3, what the heck is happening with Netflix?
Oh, that's a good one. What's happening with Netflix? Okay, that's my third one. You gave me my third one, Ellen.
Here you go. You're welcome.
Thank you. My third one. So my third one, and Netflix is a part of it, is the world is no longer divided between SVOD, AVOD, TVOD, BVOD, right? And fast. The world is all of these apps are going to be all of the things, right? And so, you know, we saw that initially when, you know, Hulu, I think, was a pioneer here where Hulu said, you know what, we're going to have ads and we're going to have subscriptions. We're going to be AVOD and SVOD. And then Hulu said, you know what, we're going to have live TV. So we're going to be, you know, we're going to be an MVPD and we're also going to have fast, right? So like Hulu, I think, kind of set the bar. And then Netflix obviously last year said, well, we need an ad-supported tier as well. So we're going to be AVOD and SVOD, Paramount, HBO Max, go down the list. All of these big apps now are doing both or multiple things, multiple monetization models. And it makes a ton of sense because they want to be able to appeal to as many consumers as possible. And there's this fragmentation of content and apps, right? So it's no longer just a world where me as a consumer, I have to have Netflix, so I'm willing to pay for it. If I don't want to pay $15 a month for Netflix, I can go watch great content on Pluto for free or Tubi for free, right? And so Netflix has to go in that direction. Hulu had to go in that direction. And so I think what's interesting about this moment right now is, you know, in any nascent industry or sector, there's always fragmentation before there's consolidation, right? And so what's happening right now is this crazy fragmentation of all these apps. There's all these apps. Everybody wants to charge money. Everyone wants to have an ad-supported tier. Over time, I think what we're going to start seeing is a lot more aggregation of the apps. I think a lot of the apps are going to say, we're going to get out of the standalone business and we're just going to sell our content and our inventory through fast apps or other kind of aggregation apps that have most of the demand, the consumer demand. And, I think there's going to be consolidation over time. It's just going to be interesting to see what dictates that consolidation, right? Is it because Amazon did such an awesome job creating a flywheel with ads, or Roku did an awesome job creating flywheel with ads, that the consolidation went in that direction? Or did Google do a really good job of creating the software layer for the TVs, which then gave them access to the most data, which then, got them the most consumers, which then led them to have the most kind of leverage with the apps, right? So there's a lot of different kind of variables here that could dictate which direction the consolidation happens in, but monitoring that right now is going to be fascinating.
So let's take one quick break to identify and understand all the acronyms, because we love a good acronym.
Sorry.
So no, it's good. It's good, because you said fast and I was like, what the fuck is fast now? But SVOD is subscription video on demand. So it's like HBO Max. So, right. You don't have any commercials on it or ads. AVOD is ad supported video on demand. So, I don't know, Prime, Hulu, something like that. And then you said fast. What the heck is fast?
Fast. Great question. So FAST stands for free ad supported television. So, so the idea is,
got it.
Yeah. So if you're watching an app and it's kind of like a live stream. So the key with SVOD and AVOD they are video on demand. So I pull it up and I can watch whatever I want, whenever I want to watch it. Fast is a little bit more of like a TV live streaming feed, and you're not paying for anything. Nope. YouTube TV is not fast because it's not free. It's not free. Right.
Oh, okay. All right. So where is YouTube TV then?
YouTube TV is a virtual MVPD. Oh man. But here's the thing, right? So YouTube TV, this is why it's complicated, right? YouTube TV is a virtual MVPD. YouTube TV is also SVOD because you got to pay for it, and you can now watch on-demand content on YouTube TV. It's AVOD because it is subsidized by ads, right? It's not completely free, but it is ad supported. And so that's what, all of this gets very confusing very fast because there's overlap, right? Like something that is fast can also be SVOD and AVOD based on what I just explained, right? So kind of understanding the terms is important, understanding the gray areas and the overlap between them is important. And just understanding that there's there's not always just this is the right answer. There's different ways to approach it and think about it.
Right.
And just keep an open mind, I guess.
Hi, did you know that at Ellen Parker Consulting, we now offer an accelerator program where we attract, recruit, and train future marketers? And their training include a 6 weeks program where they cover programmatic landscape, important industry trends, the differences between targeting placement and targeting mix, and their best practices, including optimization and reporting hacks. And they're able to set up, manage, and monitor a demo campaign in the trade desk, everything including audience selection, inventory optimization, SPO, creative upload, brand safety, you name it. They're able to do it at the end of the 6 weeks program. So if you are part of the 90% of employers struggling to find a skilled candidate today and not willing to spend $14,900 on a bad hire, according to Zippia, give us a call. Let's discuss which one of our 5 to 10 juniors available every month is the perfect fit for your team. Clients who have hired our juniors have shared that we were able to help them save 1 to 2 months onboarding with those juniors. Give us a call right now and let's discuss the solution with you.
When we say fragmentations, okay, we talk about how each of those new walled gardens, right? Because we're going to call them walled gardens now. We talk about how they measure audience performance and give that data back to the advertiser. And the advertiser in this case is literally us managing that campaign if it's not a direct. Let's say if we're buying it via DSP. This fragmentation of CTV reminds me of the fragmentation of third-party cookies way back when big data was hot and sexy. I don't know if you remember, because each data providers would package their audience in a way that would not communicate. And so you had to buy this segment and then buy this segment, but it was the same damn thing, but it was 2 different providers. So do you think this is what's happening with the streaming world, where we kind of we can call it programmatic because fundamentally we bought it via that technology and it's automated, but it is coming back to having like that direct one-on-one, like one-to-one deals, because Magnite has this particular one, and then I don't know, somebody else has this particular one, and now we have like 6 deals to deal with instead of just a big one.
Yeah.
You think that's that?
I think that's right. I agree with that general premise. So the way I would describe it is, you know, let's do another poll of the audience. Everyone jump into the chat, come off mute. I want to hear from you. How many apps on your smart TV do you regularly use? How many do you regularly use?
I think about this one.
Start with you, Ellen. How many?
So Netflix, Prime, and then Disney Plus. So definitely the hot ones, and then HBO Max, because this is The Last of Us was on air, and Game of Thrones. That's pretty much it. And then all the other apps is for my daughter. Okay.
5. Yes.
Let's say 5. Let's say 5.
We all kind of rattled off some of the same apps, and we all said we watch 5 or 6, 4, 5, 6.
Yep. Rose
We
said
all
5 or
probably
6.
have, you know, maybe 5 to 10 different devices, maybe that we use to connect to the TV. And we also, you know, we watch a lot of TV probably, and the whole world watches a lot of TV. And we all know that CTV is the big thing, right? Like that's what's happening, and that's where the growth is going to be, right? Now, if you're one of those big players, if you're Samsung, if you're Sony, if you're Hulu, if you're Disney Plus, right? You're sitting there thinking there's a gold rush, and I am one of the 10 players that has an opportunity to capitalize on this gold rush, right? If I'm going to win this game, I'm not going to share my stuff with anybody else. I'm not sharing my data. I'm not sharing my inventory. I'm not sharing my stuff with any of these other guys that are sitting in this little ring with me of potential winners of this massive gold rush, right? I want to have all the gold for myself. So right now we're in the situation where this is a very valuable environment, but there's only 10 players really that matter, and none of them want to play nice with each other, right? And over time, and this is kind of the early fragmentation conundrum. And because we have this conundrum, it makes life really hard for marketers, right? They can't run campaigns that are holistic across multiple apps or multiple devices where all the data talks nicely to each other. It's all in the same currency. You can target, you can frequency cap, like all of that stuff. None of that stuff works right now because of this early days fragmentation problem. Now, what's going to happen over time is more and more consumers are going to come on TV. They're going to download more apps. More apps are going to come up, right? And then all of a sudden, the biggest ones are going to lose value and power because there's so many other ones coming up. And that's already happened in Netflix, right? We already saw that happen in Netflix. And if you think about the web, right? Go back to the 1990s. There was a few publishers that really mattered in the 90s. It was Yahoo, maybe it was Ask Jeeves, Microsoft. That's about it. Those guys had all the leverage in the world to sell display ad inventory however they wanted to. It was early days gold rush fragmentation. But over time, the web had gazillions of publishers. Along comes ad tech, along comes DSPs and SSPs, and they commoditize all of it, right? So now, as a buyer, like no one publisher on display inventory matters all that much because there's gazillions of them, right? So we're early days CTV right now. As it grows, as people come on TV more and watch more apps, as supply grows, those top apps, some of them will stay strong and say, we're not sharing anything. Maybe that's Netflix and Disney and three others. But then the rest of them are going to say, hey, listen, we're ready to play ball. Let's go sell our inventory and our data through a DSP and an SSP, right? So that's where we are headed. It's just going to be interesting to see what pushes certain companies in what direction over time, you know?
I know you had a question. Did he answer the question? Because I think Anoop's question was, what is it all about the second screen and how would it impact CTV?
That's a great question. So the second screen, I would assume, is mobile, right? Or you're watching, you're co-viewing, right? So you're watching TV and then you're holding your phone. You know, I do this all the time. I'm watching NBA basketball and I'm also tweeting
all day,
yeah, all day about like, oh, NBA basketball, blah, 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 oh, this game, blah, 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 right? So the second screen is really, really important, right? Because it's a different experience. The screen is a different experience from the television. It's more lean in, it's more engaging. You can do a lot more with a user on that second screen. I think the key is how can you make the connection between those two screens and then use them with each other to drive that user to view more, to engage more, to make that experience better for them. And then ultimately that drives up value, right? For publishers, for the device manufacturers, for advertisers at the end of the day.
Yeah. And also I think that's why your QR codes have become a thing now in some of the commercials. I mean, some of the commercial TV ads, whichever it is. You have a question?
Manuela, I think, came off mute.
Yeah.
Yeah, guys, hi, sorry. I did have a question, because like I read this image that someone posted today on LinkedIn, which I thought it was very representative of like CTV inventory, that it was like in percentage, like the percentage of users worldwide that have connected TV and that use Roku devices, it was 4%. And, you know, the majority of the inventory for CTV comes from Roku. So who's watching these ads? Like, what are like those inventory coming from?
Yeah, so Manuela, this might be a regional difference, right? But like Roku in the US at least is the largest device. It has the most penetration in terms of connected TV devices. I want to say, I don't know the numbers actually. I want to say it's somewhere between like 30 to 40% of all smart TVs in the United States use a Roku device. I'm not 100% sure on that number, but they are the number one. I know that. And they're not like running away with it. They have competition. Like I think Fire TV is also very popular in the United States. I think that's number 2. I want to say Samsung maybe is number 3. But Roku is very popular here in the United States. And that's why they control a lot of inventory, at least in the US, right? So the reason they control the inventory is because they have their own apps, right? Like Roku Channel, very popular app. But they also get 30% of the ad inventory from all the apps that are on Roku devices. That's huge, right? So if you're Pluto and you're like, hey, I want my app to be on Roku, Roku says, that sounds great. We'll take your app and 30% of your ad inventory as well. So that's their business model. Now in Argentina, I'm not sure, like Roku probably has much less penetration. And so they're probably more so acting like an ad tech middleman in that market where they're buying the inventory through other providers as an SSP or as just like a middleman. And then they're reselling it through their platform.
Yeah, I mean, like there's a large penetration, like Roku as well in Latin America, apparently have most of the users, but again, like most of the users, they don't watch like Roku apps, but they normally use like YouTube and Netflix. So it's the majority of like what they're watching or the usage of the apps are apps that don't have ads. So that was more like, sorry, I couldn't explain myself better.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, so if there's no ads, then obviously there's no ads, right? But if they're watching, let's say YouTube, well, then YouTube probably controls almost 100% of those ads, right? So like YouTube didn't negotiate with Roku, right? Like Roku was like, YouTube, you can have all the ads. We have no leverage in this discussion. YouTube is probably keeping 100% of their ads, even on Roku devices. But that means YouTube has a ton of power, but Roku is probably, getting 30% from a lot of the other ad-supported or ad-supported apps that are on the Roku devices. And then Roku is also probably buying aggressively through the SSPs, right? So like they may not have proprietary access to monetize, let's say YouTube's ads 100%. And I know they can't actually access them through the exchange because only Google has access to YouTube ads. But let's say, for another app, let's say it's Pluto, right? Roku gets 30% of the inventory and they get 100% of the revenue they generate from that inventory, but then they may be buying another 80% of Pluto's ads through SSPs, right? And paying Pluto for them, but then also making arbitrage on them as the DSP, if that makes sense, right? So they're not only just saying, hey, we own 30% of inventory, they're also acting like an ad network of sorts where they're buying more and then reselling that at a higher price to make margin, right? They're an ad tech company. They own DataZoo, right? OneView is DataZoo basically. So that's probably a reason, Manuel. They're probably just big on the ad tech side of things in that market, which is why maybe they're controlling a lot of the inventory.
Right. Thank you so much for answering.
Yeah, and I'm not 100% sure. I don't know that market that well. So that's something we can do.
It's actually a great question because I had no idea how Roku monetized at all. That's very interesting.
Well, you got to think of Roku again. Think of them as a walled garden, right? So like,
Yeah.
what does Google do? Google owns some of their own inventory, and then they make 100% margin on that, you know, because they're not paying anybody for it. And
Yeah.
that's inventory on YouTube. That's inventory on Google Maps, on Gmail, right? But then they're also the biggest buyer and reseller of other people's inventory, right? So Roku is doing the same thing in CTV. They have their own stuff, which they make 100% on, but then they're reselling, they're buying and reselling like an ad tech, like any ad tech company.
Got it. So thank you again for coming on the community call. This was amazing.
Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun. It was great talking to everybody. Thanks, Ellen.